There we go. My hair looks all right, so we should be right. I don't know if I need my glasses or not.
That's right. How you going anyway? How's the
Yeah,
day looking over there?
yeah, no, good, mate. I was just out bloody helping, volunteering, doing a couple of things, and probably ran over a bit and rushed back. And then I was chatting to someone, and then I had to bloody all of a sudden realise I had to duck out. But no, the
Yep.
weather out here at the moment, mate, is ticking away pretty decent. To be honest, I've had a bit of a
Yeah,
shower
yep.
come through. I think I had 4 mil, 4 and 3. Yeah, 4 today,
Yeah,
3
okay.
yesterday, I think. So that's that. But at this present stage, I'm probably sitting at, geez, without jumping off the phone, I reckon I'm probably sitting at about 260 mil for the year. I'll confirm that when I jump onto TikTok, to be honest. I'll be
Yep.
able to go through. But that's at the moment, yeah. So that's not too bad. How much rain you got over there for the year as of now?
We wouldn't be far behind that, I don't think. But and to be fair, most of that's come in the growing season, so probably more like 220, I'd say.
Right.
So at this stage, it's going pretty good. Yeah, we're pretty happy. Everything's going pretty well.
Yeah, look, there's,
Bit of a
there's no
slow
doubt.
start, but yeah,
Yeah, look, we're a bit the same, mate. We're happy. Yeah, look, can't complain. Worst places in the world in some ways, and worst places around here, to be honest.
yeah, yep,
But at the moment, it's ticking away pretty decent. You know, the media's already jumped up, reckons she's going to be some bumper yields and that. Which
yep,
further north to me in the northern area of where I live, there's going to be some big years up there. They pushed in. You know, I'd heard someone say the other day nearly 200 mil of rain just in the last couple of months. So
yeah,
you
right,
know
yep.
where so they're really high up there now. There's no doubt.
Yep, yep. So for those who don't know who you are, because you're probably not quite as popular here as you are on
No.
TikTok, you're in West Australia. What
Yeah,
region of West Australia?
yeah. So in the WA wheat belt, I am. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Yep.
So in the WA ag bit there in the wheat belt, and we're obviously probably a bit of a spiel, I guess. Yeah, we crop canola, barley, lupins, oats. And we total now cropping program, which is all cropping. We don't have any livestock. 4,400 hectares of
Yep.
crop.
Yeah, okay. Yep, yep.
So
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So did you run sheep not that long ago by the sounds of
No,
it?
look, there's a bit of a story on my one, to be honest, mate. Um, we were originally from a place called Geraldton, Chapman Valley. We were farmers up there, going
Yep.
back in the 90s. The family started up there, and obviously back in 2001, our family sold out. So when we sold out, we moved to a small town in Gingin, which is not about an hour out of Perth. Brought a little
Yeah, yeah,
hobby
I've heard
farm
of it.
there,
Yep.
and we ran cattle there. We ran export hay. We did a bit of that, but at that time I was shit. When I was living in Gingin, I was in high school, so I wasn't heavily involved in the farm. I'd come out on the weekends, weekdays, but you know how it is. I wasn't obviously working on the farm. So then in 2008 we sold out and we all moved to Perth. I got an apprenticeship, so I'm actually a qualified boilermaker welder by trade. Did my
I was
time in
going to
Perth.
ask that. I was going to ask that
Yeah,
because half your TikToks are basically fabrication of some description, and I thought there's going to be something there. Yeah.
yeah. So I spent obviously doing a 4 year apprenticeship in Perth. Mum and Dad moved to Perth. They did a bit of real estate, did their own thing, and I then went and worked on the mine. Spent many years working on the mines, just piss farting around doing shutdowns and stuff like that, which was good. But I still kept in with the ag bit. I did a harvest. Back when I was 21, did a harvest season for someone up Geraldton Way. Then
Yep.
in 2014, I did a seeding for someone out of Bedellin there. So I still kept in the region, and they were my two biggest ones I did. Obviously, before I went to Canada in 2014 and actually worked on a farm over there doing harvest. I spent about 8 months over there,
Yeah.
having a bit
Okay.
of
Yep.
fun. And then by that time, mum and dad had enough, wanted to go back farming, and I was a bit in the same boat. Had enough of Perth, had enough of FIFO, so we all teamed up, and we've got the place that we got now. But so after not farming for somewhat 15 years or more, we got back in the game again.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's yeah. You've
So
seen a
that's my
bit of
background.
everything else. It's not purely farming you've done. So that's good. A few people on my channel probably wouldn't know this either, but I for a little while wanted to pursue being a crop duster pilot there for a good yeah, it would have been 2 or 3 years, I suppose. In fact, I started it back when I was in school. I actually had a basic aeronautical knowledge TAFE course, and I did also aircraft mechanics as well. And
Yeah,
even to
okay.
this day, I still lean pretty heavily on that aircraft mechanics. Um, the TAFE course that I did there, like basic motors and all that sort of stuff, is all still relevant in what I do today. But obviously, it's slightly different with the planes. They're all generally a lot smaller, or you're getting into turbines. But yeah, it's all the piston motors are still the same thing, really.
Oh, look, good to have, mate. There's no doubt those sort of TAFE courses are important, regardless of what you've pursued from, done from there. At least you went and did some of that. And then there's no doubt, you talk about young fellas in the game and that. And one thing I'm noticing, I mean, like I said, I come from a broad background. I'm lucky. Yeah, well, I wouldn't say lucky, I guess, probably waffling on a bit. But, I'd sort of gone in, I've farmed in, theoretically two regions in WA. And that's really given me a bit of broad, as well as I've worked off farm, worked over east. So I
Yep.
worked overseas. So, it's good to be able to, as a young fellow at the time, to go and get that experience. And you talk about TAFE courses and pre-apprenticeships and stuff like that before heading back to the farm. And I think that's a bit of a lacking sometimes, I feel, in young people. They sort of want it, they finish ag school and then all of a sudden they want to just come home. That's it. They don't, the life experience you're going to get by working for someone else, not in the mining, talking about someone else's farm is really the big
Yeah, even
story.
both. Even both, I say it's like you can learn from both things. You need to learn how to work for someone else before you can start working, particularly with your family. I found like I come back and did a gap year at home for a year, and it was worked pretty hard in the meantime, which was fine. It was young and dumb and full of rum, as they say. And yeah, that was good. But at the same time, I'm glad I went way off the farm, away from my old man and my brother, and found out what working for other people's like. Because otherwise, I would have had a very one skewed sort of mind, what sort of view, you know what I mean?
Oh, look, and that's what it's about. It's about gaining those experiences, and that's a big important thing. I mean, you're going to find that I don't know. I feel like you go to a clearing sale and you'll know the son that's come back from the farm since yesterday with no other experience outside of it, and then you'll realise the fella that's actually been off and worked for other people and seen a different light.
Yep.
It can be harder working for other people because I'd come from the farming background. Don't get me wrong, but I spent a lot of my teen years, doing an apprenticeship, and then obviously early 20s, I was, working on the mine. So, it was different. It wouldn't say difficult when I first did my first harvest. Um, it wasn't difficult, but it was an eye opener in a way of I was chasing after four headers. At the time back then in 2011, it was a decent year from where I was.
Yep.
But it was just an eye opener because I hadn't done what other kids had theoretically grown up to. I mean, people go from, they'll go to school and then obviously they'll come back for the holidays and they'll work on the farm or, those long weekends. And I never did that. So, as a 20-year-old, I sort of had gone back into the ag industry there for 2 months to do a harvest. And of course, I hadn't had the knowledge of 5 years previous that others would.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, I understand completely. Yeah.
So,
Now, moving into the farm and stuff, obviously, there's almost pigeonhole myself into being a bit of a machinery guy, and obviously the big upgrade you've had lately over on TikTok, you mainly said, is the Borgo cart. So, what were your thoughts on the Borgo cart for the year? I know you've done a couple of review videos and whatever, but just for the people who haven't seen them.
yeah. Oh, look. I mean, look. Which I have been meaning to put those videos onto YouTube, onto my little channel of my tools. But look. It was a gamble. I mean, we could sit here for hours crapping on about this. I must admit, because to me it was a gamble. I'd lived and breathed Ozplow. Okay, Ozplow is obviously a WA branded air setter box and bar, the classic DBS, which gets around here in obviously a lot in WA and of course over east.
Yep.
So I'd ran that system for a long time,
Yeah. Okay.
since I started. So the change to go last year was I'd picked up some lease and it nearly, we added 1,600 hectares to the game. And we'd just done so much overseeding and we'd done so much filling up, when,
Yeah.
time's money and all that sort of stuff and trying to get the hectares per day. And the box was only 20, oh, not even that, it was 19 tonne. But the splits were crap and it was just not
Yeah.
enough. And our fertiliser would run out. We've got some decent sized paddocks here, some good runs, and that would just run out in 30 hectares. I couldn't make it back up the hill because it wouldn't be enough to come back down and all that sort of shit. So I then approached other boxes. I'd looked at a John Deere and I looked heavily at a John Deere. And look, without being biased to me being such a big John Deere man, I would have loved to have gone John Deere. But the splits were
Yep.
not there for me based on their new, the C carts there, not having enough liquid. I'm a big liquid man. I run a lot of
Yeah.
liquid fertilizer here, which is Flexion.
Yep.
So we just didn't have that. They just didn't have that. Looking at a simplicity at the time again, it all came down to availability. I couldn't get a simplicity for 2 years. And I didn't, once I got that information, I just didn't delve in. I didn't even bother. I delved in a fair bit with the John Deere. But then obviously the Borger. Now I'd seen I've got a neighbour down the road. He's got one. He had an old 8
Yep.
series. Well, not old. They're still around. And that's where we sort of began our journey there on talking to a couple of people. And the salesman, you must admit how they always can be. They can spin a
They're
yarn
the
and
good.
get you in one.
They're either good or the shit. There's, I think salesmen really can be the difference between whether you do go a product or not. It's like I've had people come onto the farm trying to sell me this and that, and you're just like, yeah, no, they are half interested. Like I would fully admit that we ended up in the next nine because the salesman just didn't give up,
Mm.
and the same went for the dryer, the setup that we had. The bloke who sells Alvin Blair's dryers he just doesn't quit. And at the end of the day, it's been a good decision because it's been a good product for us. But yeah, it's amazing how much the salesman really can make or break a deal pretty quickly, particularly if you get a shit salesman on the other end. Like the other mob we were trying to buy a drive through wouldn't even give us a quote. It's like, what are you doing here? What are we doing?
There's no doubt. I mean, it's and that's true. I mean, let's start here from the start. The salesman's the big story here. I mean, look, we all want to have our sets and whatever like that. I mean, for me, like I said, I'm a massive John Deere fan. Never shied away with it. Had that conversation with someone the other day, and so our basis definitely was John Deere. But and the salesman was good at the time. To obviously one, he steered me away, and he was, John Deere's AFCRI over here is a big dealership network.
Yep.
But it was just not enough, and our splits for our liquid was not enough. So we had to go down the next line. I did look at, someone just put about thoughts of a Morris bin up, and I did look
Yeah,
into
super.
Morris. There's no doubt I had my, wouldn't say my heart set. I'll actually admit, I did say to someone years ago, the 8 series, I'd sort of say, sorry, the 9, I said, I'd always want one that had 10 tonne of fert, 10 tonne of seed, and 7,000 of liquid. I'd be sweet. But when I
Yep.
went and looked at one in town before the Series 10, I just, and it's my own thing, it was me that was going to be, mainly operating and teaching people. And I just couldn't wrap my head around their metering system. Now, a very dumb cop out there, no doubt. But for me, I just couldn't. I just felt
Yep.
like if I'm going to teach someone, teach dad, teach a backpacker, even though there's thousands of them rolling out there with dads and backpackers all the time. But I just
Mm.
felt for me, it was just not going to fit. I just was trying to wrap my head around it and I just couldn't. Um,
Yep.
and then so that was that. And so that's where then obviously ball got come into the game a bit. And it looked at splits and looked at its ability. And that's where we sort of ended. So,
Yep.
we,
Yep.
like I said, the run thing about it, I mean, the splits were good. I've got you got the 9 series there, the 9650, so it's
Yep.
22 ton. So we're getting
Yeah.
now 60 hectares on a good day of fertilizer, okay,
Yeah. Okay.
out
Yep.
of a tank. Um, Grain for us, we have 2 grain tanks, obviously, because that's just what the split is. Um, so, that's either here or there. And the liquid, we're getting pretty good there. Same again, 60, 70 hectares of our liquid.
Yep.
We've
Yep.
got some decent rates. So, there was that aspect. So that was good. Probably one thing I wish with a ball up, and I'm probably saying that wrong every day, but is the splits. If you could make your own bins in a sense, you know what I mean? I don't need 4. I would have been happy with
Yeah.
3, but as long as they were all decent size, I think we could have really worked well. A bit like the Morris in some ways, you know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's a bit the same with us. Whatever split setup you sort of have in those bins, it's not quite right. It's never quite right. And I don't know if you found it with yours, but if that's your front bin and this is your rear bin here, I really like to run 1, 2, 3, 4 on whatever I do, and I do usually just switch either the seed or the super from front to back, and I don't ever go 2 and 4 and 1 and 3. because it's too hard with the elevator. You're trying to get that elevator to sort of to make it into bins 1 and 3. You almost got to move the truck to do it. But just thinking back, were you using an elevator or were you using a
No,
grouper style?
no. So we use a 5-1 bin, and again that's probably on my. Well, I wouldn't say it now, but I reckon there's a chance I will upgrade in another couple of years. We got that custom built to suit the old Oz player because I don't want to move
Yes.
the truck, and that's how I've designed it. Even now, we've got it, and it's on tight. I'll give it. It's tight, but it does what it needs to do. But the only thing we're lacking is we get about if that truck's chockers of fertilizer, we'll get 2 good fills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm talking chockers. The old girls are holding on for dear life. But I did look. It's funny. I got asked this a couple of weeks ago by someone around here. Why'd you buy the elevator? You don't even use it. And it's true. I got given a quote, and it had all the fruit, and I took it. The only thing it didn't have was a crane, and I would have loved one. And I was bloody this close to getting one of those lift cranes, but that I'd only used once. But that was the only thing I missed out on. But it was just
Yeah.
part of the quote, and I accepted it. And you speak to some farmers. I had a farmer not far from me. He brought a new one. He didn't even get an elevator. He said in all the years he had one, he rarely used that auger. He was the same. He had a 5-1 bin.
Yeah.
So I only used it to empty out the bins. And again, we're learning that the hectares were different this year because we had the X40 counting it. So hopefully moving forward with these scales, we'll be able to get right down to the T, right down to a bucket.
Yeah, yep, yep. No, that's bloody perfect. It seems to be a little bit of a. I'll probably be in generalisation here, but it seems to be a little bit of a WA thing to not run just straight up trucks to the like. I've only ever used elevators or augers straight up into the cedar. Like the day of the grouper bin, so to speak, is sort of almost well and truly dead over here because everyone's running either. Well, sometimes they're running the grouper bins, but most of the time people are running road trains or B doubles, and they just fill the road train or B double with seed and super and go for it. You know what I mean? And then they've sort of got something else to use the rest of the year to cart away grain or pick up fert or whatever you need to do.
No, and that's I was about to ask that with you because obviously that would just be something that you've just grown up with, I guess, is it? In the sense
Yeah,
that you
for
using
sure. Yeah,
August. Yeah,
yeah,
look, I mean, and you look, it's become look. We've still, I feel, and this is my personal opinion, the 5-1 bin market over here has picked up in the last couple of years. Now, going back 10 years ago, there was a shift for belly dumper types. Obviously, a lot of seeders have got the augers now, and we were finding there are some people running road trains with side shoots. But I don't know
yep,
what the shift is. There is 5-1 bins coming back in the market. There are some very expensive ones, very nice, good looking ones.
yep,
Um, for me, I'd buy a 5-1 bin again, 100%. I
yeah. Okay.
wouldn't. I think I like, and you are very true that the idea of I've got a bin that only does one job a year, and your aspect about having a truck and trailer sort of situation, cart, grain cut, is definitely a good type to have on the cards. There's just no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a few people over here moving towards having like a oh, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say now. Sorry, they're moving to more towards chaser bins and that sort of stuff.
Mm,
People have dual use chaser bins, and obviously, had a couple of videos ago on the YouTube, I did a bit of a thing on the Germanus, which is the Grain
yep,
King
the Grain
seed and
Kings. Yep,
super bin,
yep,
and
yep.
it looked quite good. If you're looking for a straight up dedicated chase bin, we'd almost start having to think about it because even with the biggest model they made, 60 ton, I think it was, it's plenty enough to do. I think our seeder, which is 9950, twice, I think, which I thought was pretty good.
There's no doubt. I mean, someone put up just about the Duraquip bins, and there's no doubt that we talk about belly dumpers, and that Duraquip have got their ability with the belly dumper type and the bottom augers for the situation a bit like ours. We both have elevators, and the Duraquip bins are what people. There are some that have gone to down that line here. They are popular, but
Yep.
again, price is such a big thing.
Mm,
And we've all got to sit back and talk about the price of stuff because 5-1 bins somewhat, depending on whose they are cheap to an extent.
yes.
The chaser
Yep.
bins, they're getting up there now. They really are. And it's
Mm.
the same as the Duracrypt, belly dumper top. They are quite expensive. But my real struggle, I guess, I reckon deep down, I would probably go a chase bin on two reasons being, simple, easy, dual use, very good.
Yep.
But it's liquid that gets me. And a lot
Yeah.
of people could say, oh, well, Tim, why don't you run another truck? And I don't. I did that my first year here. I ran two trucks, one for fert and seed, and that's even before I had a 5 in bin and it was going up an auger.
Yep.
And then I turned around and had a flex end truck. It used to take me an hour and 20 minutes to fill up,
Yeah. Yep.
and that's just not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that takes its toll if you're doing that once or twice or 3 times a day. It certainly can get out of hand for sure.
Yeah, heck, definitely, doesn't it? You start chomping up that you could have been out in the paddock. Nowadays, back on my old Oz play, I could fill that whole thing up in 20 minutes, liquid and all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and now we're probably sitting there with a bit more. We're probably at about 30 minutes. And I think that's good.
Yeah.
Others could be saying it's not, but for me, I reckon that's quite good.
Yeah, I reckon with ours from start to finish so we do run 2 trucks, 1B double usually has, your seed or your urea in it, and then a single with DAP or MAP in it, and, they can generally get about 3 fills each, so by the time you pull the certain amounts, usually running 150 kilos of urea out and, anywhere from 60 to 100 of DAP, and then seeds usually 80 or 70 wherever we go. It sort of just works out a neat number in the trucks for us, so that's an advantage. But I will admit, using the elevator, it still takes more time than using a chaser bin, for sure. Yeah,
There's no doubt. I mean, look, that's one of my biggest things now is ability. I've got to fill that thing up more because
yeah,
it's bigger. And you saying you can get 3 fills, I think that's really good productivity there.
yeah,
And again, the chase bins are a bit the same, and we talk about money and dual purpose and that. They do. There's no doubt. But again, for me, it's you're driving a tractor down the road instead of a truck. Going between leases, you're driving a tractor down the road with
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. That I'm talking about over here could be very different over there, but I'm
We're the
not saying
same. Yeah,
it's not uncommon here. There's a lot of people
yeah,
that have got chase bins with them. And Grain King, I'm a Grain King fan. I've got one of their chaser bins,
yeah. Okay.
and
Yeah,
I've got one of the very early Nyrex ones. Started off in 2017 when I
yep.
brought that a 30 ton, and
So
I
run
put.
us through that just out of curiosity, because I don't actually know of anyone who's got one, but I know that there's plenty of them out there. There's just no one next to me who's got one. What did you think of it, and what do you think of the new ones going forward?
So, I mean, back in the day when geez, I sound bad when I say back in the day, it was a couple of years ago, but
We're all
2017,
getting
I
old.
brought, I'd hide chase bins for two harvests when I started. And it
Yep.
came to point that, we need something of our own and that, not to obviously put, for seeding, but we needed something. I didn't even look. I just went straight to Grain King. And that probably
Yeah.
sounds
Okay.
quite cocky in one ways, but they are the most popular bin over here in WA. So
Yeah. Okay.
they just released this Nyrex, which was made out of this Strenex type steel, apparently very, you could bend it and very springy.
Yep.
And it was somewhat wouldn't say cheaper, but they at the start they huck bolted everything. The huck bolts, obviously, for people, it's a bolt goes around the back of it and it clamps on. A special machine clamps it in, and when it gets to a certain tension, it'll snap the back off. So it's obviously quite tight. They never undo sometimes in conditions. So it was all huck bolted together, and so that was obviously a positive. They could keep the cost down. So back then I paid 77 grand for that,
Mm.
for a 30 ton. Um,
Yep.
and here we are all these years later. 2 years ago, I put an extension on it. I think I haven't got scales on it. That is the next job to do. And I think we could be up to about 36, 38 ton now with that, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and it's done really well. Very easy to deal with those Grain King people. I've had the auger rebalanced, took the chaseman up there they did the extension, and they were brilliant. There's no
Yep.
doubt. They know how to build a chaseman. They know what the market wants to do and how it wants to be done. And they've changed their processes. They don't huck it anymore. They turn around and they weld it, which is fine. They've gone back to that. But I think the biggest point now is chasebins are getting expensive. You
They
know,
are. Yeah.
that they are getting really, really high. And it's funny at the moment over here in WA, there's this massive rush for chaser bins secondhand, and a 1992 chaser bin the other day, old mate was asking 60 grand, and I'm just
Jesus
sitting there going
Christ.
like, mate, come on, like, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of chase bins here. They're asking top dollars. The market for chase bins over here, for some reason, is huge, and it's funny
Yeah,
because
interesting.
when we've gone from the second-hand market to new, I mean, I couldn't even. I think the new ones are near close to 150, let's say,
Yeah,
even
yep.
170. You start getting up some big tons, you're going to start paying some big dollars. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it's the same with ours. So we've got 75-ton balsa, and we got that in an absolute steal. I think it was 165,000 there 2021, right before COVID hit. So it was like
Mhm.
right on the money. And local farmer here was importing them, and he imported I think 15 or 20 of them at the time. And then just only a year after that, there was another fella here. He actually started selling them, and in that time, the same bin's gone up well north of 300 over the COVID period.
But they're big bins, big augers.
They
Shit,
are,
I've
yeah,
seen some videos. They're massive. They put the grain king to shame. In some ways, they're big. There's no doubt.
yeah, and yeah, that has its drawbacks as well. But at the end of the day, it was a pretty good deal for us, and like yeah, one of those things you go, geez, I wish I'd bought two. It's
Mm.
always the
Oh,
way.
100%. If we all knew what we knew now with how things were pre-COVID, I think there's a lot of things we would have brought double or brought new. There's no
Yeah,
doubt wouldn't have waited off to where we are now in what the society's like with the cost of things. So how big's that auger on that blaze at Chase bin?
I think they're 24 each, I think, so they're monstrous, but you go, "Oh, they're big and sort of ungainly," but it seems to be very manageable. Like it's not as ridiculous as you think, and because it's sort of it can either do 20, 40, 60, or 80% or all the way to 100, you could sort of regulate. Like your 20% is your ton a minute. It's quite manageable for topping off trucks and that sort of thing. And when you get a woofing at 60, you sort of you're living, but that's the point. You're in and out, a trailer in 3 to 4 minutes and on to the next one, and that's sort of the beauty of it. But I don't know. We've got a Dunstan as well over here, which is built in Kerrang, just over in Victoria, and I don't know, it just seems to be more prone to chucking it over the side, even though it's doing less tons per minute. I think it's a 18-inch auger, I think, on it. So yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was funny. There's a guy over here that's built chase bins, and recently he's gone to an 18-inch auger. And to
Yeah.
me, the 18 inches, look, again, this is my opinion. They're just not what the 18 inches back in the 90s were huge. They were classed
Yeah.
as big
Yeah.
chasing. But when we start talking, the 24 inches, 20 inches, even bigger, 22 inches,
Mm.
they're monstrous, but they do pump out the grain. And nowadays, we all know that, either one header or multiple headers, you want to be only at the bin for a short amount of time.
Yep. Yeah, for
I
sure.
think my chase have been at a good day. It depends. She's probably it can unload at about 3 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Yep, that's pretty good, really. I mean, I think half of the battle, particularly with model headers, is just getting back to the headers as quickly as possible. So,
Mm.
70 tons, all well and good. To be honest with you, you talk about usable capacity of a bin, and it's more like 60, sort of where you want to be flying around with barley and canola. It's like probably Canola's back more like 55 ton. You want to get in, get out, and get back to the headers before they're flowing over. You know what I mean? It's
One
you
thing
don't use 75 ton very often.
yeah, and then sorry, I've missed probably something. How many headers do you actually have?
So we had one X9 for the last 2 years, along with two 8250 and 9250 headers, the case
Yeah,
headers.
yeah.
And this year we're going to two X9, so we're hoping to just run two X9s off one balls of bin for the majority of it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good size bin. I mean, I've brought another header this year, and it's going to be an interesting conversation. And I've said this to a couple of people already that, I'm unsure if I'll still have that chase bin in the sense moving forward. Just, I've always 41. around here with 2 headers. Well, not around here, so but
That's a sweet
41
spot.
seems to be that number.
Yeah. Yep.
But you are right. You talk about usable capacity, and I agree with you there, because I don't think, again, our run lines, we're a controlled traffic system, so we're not darting across everywhere. Um, but again, we're probably, it depends. We'll probably pick up either box and a half or two if we're lucky. But I mean, I used to be able to pick, now with that extension, I can pick three. So
Yeah. Okay.
I'm only going to be able to get a box and a half off each header. And that's even if, depending on where the run is and where that ends. You could, there was times I'd run down the hill and I'd have probably a box and a half on, and we all know it can take
Yeah.
three. But I'm in that way of going down, and I might as well unload before going
Yeah.
back up. There's no point. And I've seen chase bin drivers do this. The backpackers sometimes, they'll turn around and they'll still have 20 ton going back up the hill. But that's where the problem lies. That it's sort of, you cut yourself.
Yeah, yep, no, 100%, yeah. And I've seen there's plenty of operators around here running four headers. Well, the next door neighbour runs four, and he just runs two bins, and they all follow each other up the run. They're all the same width, at the same headers. They're all going the same speed, and they just run up the paddock, run back down. The bins unload, and they start again. And that's
Yeah.
just like it's almost like a symphony watching them do it. But we've for many years gone, in the past we've had contractors. We had two. The red headers had 60-foot fronts. The green headers had a 50-foot front, so it's flying. And then the contractor we had, who's my brother, he's had a 9230 with a 45-foot front. So we were just all over the shop. We just needed to streamline the job a little bit and try and make it a bit more user friendly.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, for us, like I said, we're controlled traffic, and this other header I brought this year, it's identical to the one I already own. It's a 790 John Deere, and they're both with 40-foot fronts, 740Ds, and again,
You
controlled
didn't
traffic.
look at the S7?
No, again, look, we're a second-hand market, mate, for the header. And
Yeah,
you've
okay.
seen a couple of my videos. I've already, as Dad would say, or Mum would say, we've already spent enough. There's no doubt, and it
Yeah.
was it was a big. Look, I'll hands up. We've had a big upgrade year, and I mean, I was speaking to a farmer today. He's done the same. It's not brand new gear, but he's changed a lot of gear. It's just one of those. You'll get those years that you will be, upgrading. And to be honest, our aspect here is we're not going to upgrade for a long time. I brought a new SP. That's going to hopefully do me many hours to come. I brought a new 9R. Again, same thing again. My old 9630 had 8,000 hours on it. I'm expecting this to do the same. So
Yeah.
there's a lot
Yep.
of time doing that. So, but if I had the bit of a cash flow, I'd look at a new S. I looked at one at a show I went to yesterday.
Yep.
But look, look, X9 is probably going to be our next purchase in years to come when the other one maybe goes, I think.
Yep.
But just, yeah, it's again just following that trend, and WA is picking it up. There are more X9s going out. It's not uncommon anymore. Going back
Yep.
since they came out, you wouldn't find too many, but it's just crop type idea in the way of
Well,
trying to
that's
keep
what I
them
was going to
hungry.
ask you actually. What's sort of average yields are you looking at for your wheat, your barley? Did you say you go canola or not? I didn't catch
Yeah,
that
look,
at the start.
it's such a hard one because for me, like an average canola is about 1.2, I reckon.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
us here, oats is you're looking at about that three as an average, two and a half. Wheat's probably about that two and a half, and then the barley's probably two and a half. Can be a three, but just with yields like that, and again, depending on the year, X9s for us. Like I can't have an X9 in some ways unless I had a 60-foot just to feed it. The oats would probably be
Yeah.
right, but when you start talking 2 ton of weight, those X9s
Yeah.
need 4 ton of weight.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's sort of, as you said, the 60-foot will probably give you more of a hope you sort of be up. I'm thinking that 8 to 10 kilometers with a 60-foot, but we were 3 ton weed here last year with X9, and it was like 50-foot front, so take that in as well. But we were doing 12Ks and looking to go quicker. And to be honest with you, when you get going that quick, you just start bashing header fronts to bits. You know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah. Look, I'm always the slowest one, to be honest, mate. Yeah, the old man, he'll pump out 10Ks and all that. But I mean, look, it's a class nine, as Dad would say, and it's got the ability to run it. It really does.
Yeah, yeah,
There's no doubt. It's got its ability to chomp through some grain at being class nine. I started off with a class seven. So,
Mm.
going to a 9 was definitely a big kick up and then speed and that. But when you
Yep.
start talking an X9 with a double class sort of thing, yeah, that's where you've really got to feed it and keep it fed. And I'm talking here. I mean, there's, like I said, yourselves over there with that. That works well for you. I mean, and then X9s are still becoming a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting to see. See the differences, and I find myself getting into a bit of a thing when I'm talking about on YouTube or TikToks or whatever about that we should all be doing this, we should all be doing that, and then you go, well, yeah, no, there's a bloke I went to head of school with back in 2014, I think it was, and he was talking about it being an average of like a ton to the hectare for wheat wherever he was. I think he was over there somewhere as well, probably a little fair bit more marginal, and it was like it was a matter of trying to get the things running at 18 k's per hour or 16 k's per hour, not 10. So there's so many horses for courses, you can't make too many assumptions or whatnot. You know what I mean?
No, and that's the thing. I mean, like I said, for us, look, for me, like I said, I'm the slow one on that. But, the one thing about it is always just trying to keep them fed. And that's the biggest thing, making. And look, we've had years that have been a bit down. And yeah, of course, it sounds quite, gruesome in the header. And you can hear it going through the rotor and that. But obviously,
Yep.
touch wood, we've been quite lucky that the last couple of
Yeah.
years have been very good to us. So, it's quite exciting. But, the headers nowadays, the classes and the different. There's so many different types. We talk about
Yeah.
keeping them full. Some of these headers can work at half capacity and still do as good as a full header in some capacity basis. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
100%. Yeah. Yep.
Um,
But you just don't want to, buddy. Yeah. You try to want to wring their neck to get the most out of them. I mean, that's the trying to get the most out of your rotor hours because you're paying so much for the thing. That's the hard part.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I mean, you're talking about, what brand new headers are worth nowadays, and we've all heard what an X9's worth. We've all heard what a new S series is worth. There's no doubt. There's
Mm.
some dollars there, and that's why the second-hand market for us over here at the moment, is so strong.
Mm.
I looked at our farming magazine that comes through every week, and the same headers have been in there for the last 2 months from AFCO.
Yeah.
They just can't. There's just been nothing on because they want top dollars for what they are.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they,
And people just
so,
don't have the cash. It's as simple as that.
and it is, there's no doubt. I mean, there was a 22 series, 22 model, 780 with a comb, all that sort of stuff, and they're asking 700K.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
a new one nowadays. Oh, look, I haven't heard the S series market. Probably I reckon the S7 could be a lot more. I know a farmer last year he would have probably paid at a mil for a generalised
Yeah.
780.
I was thinking about, yeah, it's somewhere in the 900s, combine only, no front.
Yeah, and that's look. I think and that's where these costings. I mean, you talk about some of these newer headers coming out. I haven't seen the new case, and I know that I think you did. You would have seen it over there being released. Or sorry, no, that was a quad track, but you might have seen that header as well. I
Yeah, so
went to
we've
my own.
we've sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, no, no. You're right. You go on.
So we had he's just asked about the IF11 and the CR11 here.
Right.
I haven't seen either of them in a flash or in action yet. I've seen the IF10 here, which is a single rotor or a big single rotor, just to the south of Yarrawonga there, and it was quite impressive, doing sort of 60 ton an hour and 5 ton weight. And to be honest with you, it's probably going to be the pick of them around here with the amount of case people around here,
Yeah.
ourselves included. If we hadn't gone to an X9, we probably would have gone that way or a CR11 more than likely. Yeah.
And the CR11, I went to the opening day of the CR11 in Perth when it came out. And look, don't get me wrong, it turned to me a bit. It's interesting.
Mm.
I've never been a New Holland man to save me life at all. But just when I looked over that, it was an interesting conversation. There was just certain ability. I reckon there were certain things on it. It was obviously, being its size, it was bigger, but there was just good things that they thought of, good ways to get into stuff. I remember looking in the back there where the sieves were
Yep.
and all that. It was just huge. You could stand in it
Yeah.
nearly. It was massive. It was really good. Same as some of the belts are chained to chains compared to what it used to be like. So they'd listen to a couple of boys, there's no doubt, on how they wanted to run it. But yeah, look, CR11s out here, I haven't heard too many hitting the market, especially in the region I'm in. There are going to be some down south. I think this year is its first. Yeah, this year's its first year of
Sort of
actually
real year.
production
Yeah.
of obviously. I think you can buy them. So I haven't
Yeah.
heard too many. Not to say there's none around, but again, it's the cost. I remember hearing they were going to be up near to that 1.6. So
Mm,
you know, it becomes its big own market there with what farmers are going to run it and how big those
mm.
farmers are.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's really yes. It comes back to the cash thing. How much can you afford in your repayments? How long you really want to drag this thing out for, and whether you can stomach the repayments. That's the hard part, isn't it?
And I guess it comes down to if you look at, I guess, yeah, the cost per ride is a big thing. But also, some of these people are only using it 5, 6, 8 weeks a year, depending on your
Mm,
program. What's the point
yeah,
of having your CR11 if you're doing 4 weeks?
yeah. That's
In
hard,
the
isn't it?
sense of as a single header, I'm talking about. Obviously there's going to
Mm,
be some big farmers out there that have only do 4 weeks of harvest because they've got about 5 headers.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
but the single type farmer, in that sort of medium range where they only run ahead of one, now, I just can't see some of these CR11s coming into that market. You talk about the
I
cost.
guess I guess in that regard, the Sarah 11's probably going to fill a market that we didn't have very long ago. That's like it's a header and a half. People who don't want to splash out for a second one because obviously those
Oh,
repayments
God,
are
yeah.
terrible. You just
Yeah.
trade one straight into a bigger one, and you still got your one that probably about that. Oh, what are you looking? Which it depends where you are, but sort of that 4,000 hectare is probably that's going to be about the limit, isn't it? Really.
And you are right, I guess. And I did hear that as a big comment last year. The CR11's coming in the market. Yeah, you're going to find that boys that had two, they'll go to one, all
Mm,
that sort of stuff. So you are. I think that's where that market is going to be. Um, look, I don't know. I mean, now that and I haven't look, we haven't even started yet. And I was doing, 40-foot cuts last year. I'll be doing, 80. You want to stomach a 60-foot compared to 80,
mm,
where you're running two. Yes,
mm.
you've probably got more headaches, but I don't know. The cut width, is always appealing. I feel like now that I'm going to have a second header, we're going to be, look, let's just throw a number. I could be a day in front every day because I've
Yeah,
got a second one. If you're going to go back to a CR11, yeah, you're probably going to do the most of two in a day. But again, it's just the cost is where that's going to be. I feel like, and again,
100%.
some people are looking at second-hand headers and the cost to keep them alive are outweighing some of these brand new ones.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah. Yep. No, I agree with that completely. Yeah. So, but leading on, obviously we've done chase bins, but do you guys run mother bins generally, or have pretty good truck contractors, or what's the deal there?
No, no. So I've got trucking contractors, but as time goes on, we cart further and further in some ways, and the years have been nice to us. But I've got a mother bin now. I run 3 round bins, so they're 60 ton. They're DE engineering
Yep.
field bins,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so they're
Yep.
good. They're all pulled with Chamberlain 4480s, the fleet there, so which is really
Yep.
really good. And then 2 years ago, 22. I brought a Vennings mother bin from a fella down south that was a
Yeah.
couple of
Okay.
years old. And so that's 120 ton.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's decent size too. Yeah. Yep.
Mm. Probably a
Oh, well,
bit of job that
that'll
will.
keeps you going pretty well. Like that's what do you took 180 and 120. That's a fair bit of in storage capacity in the paddock.
Oh God, yeah. And I mean, the Vennings is good price at the time, good ability. It's got all remotes, shut the clutch on and off. Probably the only thing I don't like about it is the lids. Now they're big folding up lids, and of course the opening is only about 800 mil, and down the line, and it's split. So of course you're only getting that bin water level, which is
Yeah.
fine. But I do feel like on the bigger crops, your barley and your oats, you'd like to be able to chonk it right to the top. You want to heat that
Yeah.
over and just run it down the line, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yep, I understand that. Yeah, so there's a fair few of the Grain King ones getting around over there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they have the two biggest mother bins in the world.
They do. The Maximus is at 350, I think they're up to now.
Mm,
There's some going around. but it comes back to price. I mean, those bins, I think the last rumor I had going around was 500K. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
that's
lot of
monstrous,
dollars
isn't
there.
it? I mean, you can
Um,
buy a truck for that.
oh God, yeah, yeah, oh, exactly. And you can buy many round bins for that
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
price. But it comes down to trafficability, usability. In some ways, I've always said that, Dad, as time's gone on, I feel like I'd love to in a couple of years get rid of my 3 round bins and go to one bin. And the reasoning being, well, I've got 6 bits of machinery there. I've got to deal with, I've
yeah,
got to maintain, I've got to pay for with insurance. But then in other ways, I wouldn't have it any other way. I can split bins. I can use them to do something like, a bit of seed cleaning. One's still got 10 ton in it, but two's empty, or one's empty and
yeah,
the other two are full. All those aspects play big. And
yeah, 100%.
you I'd like to go down that line of having one big bin, but then I think of that. So I'm always a bit like that, which way to go. But Grain King is definitely the biggest market for them over here, but not the Maximus. The previous to Maximus, they had the standard old 120, 150 ton bins, and they're still floating around in high demand as well.
Yeah,
So
okay.
what mother bins are you running?
So we don't run mother beans here on this farm, but they're pretty common. I'd say Coolman's pretty common over here. Not too many Norwich. I would say we're probably. I think a lot of people are embracing the on farm storage a bit more and just running the trucks as best we can. We've never had mother beans. We've just gone for more trucks generally. And because we're doing on farm storage all the time, we always get pretty good turnaround times. Like it's pretty rare to get sort of any more than 45 minutes or 30 minutes for an unload. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's no sort of real need for a mother bin. Like there's times where I just love to have a 350-ton mother bin sitting in the paddock. There's rain coming, you want to knock blokes off, you just want to punch another 2 or 3 hours yourself and just go. But at the end of the day, it's just not possible. But by the time we got 75-ton in the balls and 36-ton in the Dunstan, and then 2 road trains and generally B double as well, you're getting up to 350-ton anyway. You know what I mean? It's getting up there. There's plenty of storage.
oh, and look on farm storage. It's a big market. Well, sorry, the market over here for them isn't growing yet. There are
Yeah.
some
Okay.
guys that have got it. It's becoming something, but you're not going to find, I don't feel, many as much as you guys over there with your on farm storage in some big
Mm,
ways. Not in a bad way,
that's
uh,
interesting.
but just over here we've got our main grain mob is CBH, Cooperative Bulk Handling, which is obviously owned by farmers for many years. And there, you've got big storage facilities. In my sense, I've got 120Ks behind me. I cart 110Ks from me because of freight and freight charges.
Yep.
So they're regularly available. I don't we for me it'd be a big cost to get into it.
Mm,
But I do see the big
especially
benefit.
now.
The big benefit is huge for them. There's no doubt. And I
Mm,
think if I had the cash flow to do it, I'd probably look at on farm. Definitely, really would. But
yeah.
as someone said to me once before, they go, Tim, at the end of the day, CBH have already got it there. You haven't outlaid big. They're looking after it for you. They're carting it for you.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, it's at a decent cost, but if I was to try and wrap up the amount of storage I'd need for the amount of tons that we produce, sometimes, to me, it's a lot cheaper to just send it to CBH. Yep, I can't
Yeah.
play the
Yep.
market like a lot, but yeah.
I think it was more of a thing. Like we were probably one of the early adopters of it over here. In fact, probably nearly the first one that started playing around with it. The old man, he put up 1,000-ton silo back in the late 90s. I think 95. He actually bought it secondhand, dismantled it, and brought it back and set it up. And we've only, yeah, we went through a pretty big boom time around 2010 to 2020, I should say, and it where we just put up heaps of them, and they were cheap. Like it was cheap storage, and now it's like we were working on a dollar a ton. I think what is it now? $100 a ton, and now it's more like $200-300 per ton. It's just ridiculous. The cost of these bins has just gone ridiculous, like everything else, and what was a cheap option is now not so cheap. But it's yeah. Talking about freight receivals around us, there's still plenty of them around here. Like we've got your grain corp, your grain flow in town, like they're just in the way, and then a few other ones a bit further away that you can go to if the price is a bit better. But at the end of the day, we nearly warehouse everything anyway. It's doesn't really make much sense to go. It's at the closest one, you know what I mean?
Mm. I mean, like I said, for us, you're right. Again, we've touched on it many times in this video. Cost of things, and that's a real thing about farming. It's always trying to find the best buck for what it is. And like I said, I'd love to go to on farm in a way. I really would. I'd find that you'd save that money on the cartage of at harvest. But I guess cash flow is a big thing. We
Mm,
sell it, then we sell it at harvest. We get paid at harvest.
yeah,
For
then you
us,
set them.
yeah, and the market, if you want to sit, and some people do it, and I tip my hat off to them. If they want to play the grain market very well, some people made a lot of money by doing it, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
Again, but for us over here, again, CBH is so big in the network that you can take it down there, and they'll warehouse it and they'll look after it, and then you can sell it during the year and not have to worry about trying to get it out of the silo or out of the shed or something like that. I mean, I've got a good friend of mine. He's got a massive facility, huge, and they outload all year, and that's not a drama to him. He's got enough mates, enough boys on the farm to help him and get it done, and it works really well. And he was one of the very early adopters over here,
Yep.
with the size of what he's got. But I just think it really picks a certain market and a certain farmer to have that much storage.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, I would say it has gotten popular over here. There was a time where it was only maybe 20%. I'd say it's more like 60 or 80% now. There's just the physical tons that were going into grain flow in town. They actually said it really has slumped, like the amount that ended up in there. And yeah, it's just the way it is. Farmers started running their own trucks, just to pick up on the freight as well. Like, and we get a little bit of stick over that, but that's yeah, it's at the end of the day, it probably equates to about 40% of the money we make. So it's sort of
Mm,
it's up there. At least it was. I would say it's probably a little bit more skinny now, but it really depends on the market because there was such an abundance of people sort of jumped into it. The cream went off the top a little bit. Now you're dealing with customers. If you got a good set, the customers sometimes you just have to take a little bit of bath on the price because if you don't do it, the next bloke's just going to do it. So
mm,
it's the cream was there. So as I said, that 2010 to 2020, that was about when we made the most money out of it. And before that, when people are still trying to get over the AWB board slump,
yes,
like when that
yeah,
the shutdown,
yeah.
and people were trying to get markets for this grain, and they were just getting nothing.
Look, there's no doubt. Like I said, it all comes down to, I mean, the size of the farm. I mean, for me, a couple of 1,000 ton silos would do well, but obviously, I'd still need more storage in some ways. But like I said, for us, it's with the network that we have and the places that we can sell to. In the last probably last 10 years, I reckon some more mobs have been coming into the market. CBH isn't the only one anymore. Where they used to be,
Yeah,
CBH owned all of WA, and nowadays there's a lot of people that are doing other sort of selling points. Last year there was a new place that opened up for our oats, which worked out really, really well. So,
yep,
it's becoming better that we can get rid of the grain faster in some ways, and we've got more markets as well to play with.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's become another thing as well. So for the grain storage, I think there's some people that are gun own and they really love it. Some people are very interested in it. It does tweak their ears when you talk about it and moving forward of the cost. And there are probably people looking into it now.
hmm.
So yeah.
What's just probably go for another 5 more minutes here, so I don't want to harp on this forever. But what's the going into fertilizer? Is CBH generally deal with that for you guys as well, or is it a
Yeah, so
different company?
no, CBH is CBH started fertilizer 10 years ago.
Yep.
So we have got CBH, CSBP, Whitford, Summit, Nutrien. So we've got a bit of a market. Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, and there's probably more I've missed. There'd be no doubt there is. So there is a lot of market over here for fertiliser. We can, if you want to sit down and really nut through it on who's going to do the best deal, there's enough to do that here.
Yeah.
I'm a big CSVP. That's all we use. I don't go anywhere else. That's just because, how do you put it? I probably just don't know any different in some ways. There's some people go with CBH, some people go with Summit, and you speak to some of these guys have been with them for years. So to me, it's just look, CSVP's done us well, good product, always good backup,
Yep.
and always up for a good chat in a way like that. So,
Yep. Yep.
so what about you guys over there? That's something I've actually never even spoke to about anyone. So what's the market like over there?
I mean, it's pretty cutthroat. I would say there was a time where we were sort of dealing with one bloke or one company alone, or particularly one seller alone, and he changed jobs a couple of times, changed companies a couple of times, and the cream just sort of went off it a bit. And to be honest with you, it is absolutely cutthroat. Like you're squabbling over dollars per ton, and they get really narky about it as well. So
Yeah,
it's
right.
sort of um, there was a time when we used to be pretty set with the one bloke and the one company, but that's sort of gone now. We're dealing with at least three or four, just trying to get the best deal, and that I think everyone's doing it. I think we were the last ones not to do it. I mean, like it was just been like that for so long, and yeah, it's. I mean, everyone's just pulling their hair out of the fur market at the moment. It's shocking. Yeah,
Oh, it is 100%. Shit, it's through the roof. I mean, when you start talking about, and I mean, geez, I'm not no big farmer in any way. And you do wonder how some of those really big farmers, when we start talking, you talk about a family here, crops off, I swear it's 45,000 hectares,
yeah,
and what that rate would be, I couldn't tell you, but what that FERT bill would be bloody
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
So,
yeah. No, it's ridiculous.
yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, over here, like I said, we've got plenty of market, but they all
Mm,
practically copy themselves. I mean, one day CSBP will drop, how much FlexN is. All of a sudden, all of them will drop it, or they'll all come out.
yeah,
It'll be. I remember many years ago, and I'll never forget it. Back when fertilizer liquid was cheapish in a way, I remember $500 come across the market, and within an hour, all other three of them dropped to 500. And that's what they
yeah,
keep doing with some of their products even now. Someone
yeah.
drops
No,
and they'll
it's
all drop. And so is it really cutthroat? Well, no, because they're all dropping at the same time. And I mean, obviously, old mate who's been with Whitford or with Summit, jumps over to CSBP. Well, no, because Whitford's selling at the same as CSBP. So, and I'm using that as an example. But do you get what I mean? So
yeah,
that's
yep.
probably our biggest
No,
seller.
I understand.
Mm.
I'll just have a look at a couple of these comments before we jet off here. So just look at the bottom of it. And and Timmy, how's the line you guys got the other day going? Not sure what that one means.
No,
What
no, I don't. No, what does
you?
that mean, Lon?
Not sure.
What truck do I run? I don't. Well, I've got a Scania eight wheeler. That's the truck that I run, which is just a generalised eight wheeler, no trailer behind it. And I've got an old Mitsubishi truck.
Yep. And just looking at Rod Manwaring, he's from Murder Fame. He asked how the season's going over there. We said that at the start, but just give him a recap.
Yeah, no, the season's going over here pretty good. Um,
Yep.
Not going to say too much because I'm not going to jinx myself, touch wood, but all I'm going to say is ticking away. And there's going to be farmers out there that are not ticking away and they've had some slow starts and they're very behind or the rain hasn't got to them. But at the present stage, I can't speak for every farmer here in WA, but for where I am now, I'm definitely fortunate, definitely lucky. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, just going back to Noah's question here again. How did the K785 project look? It looks very similar to the other 715 that we had here on demo. It's just going to be another set of horsepower in the fleet. I think they needed to catch up to John Deere a little bit there because they sort of got a bit outshadowed there at the start.
Mm.
But now 785 contract to 830 9RX, it's not the same, but it's pretty close. And you pick whichever color you want, really.
Yeah.
Where else do we got here?
What
I
we
think
got?
that's about it. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Yeah, Alex has got one. Yeah, like to know what hectares would you justify for an SP sprayer over Tagalong?
That's a
Well, I
good
mean
question.
that's anyone's game, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah, and I guess both of us can answer that. For me, we only just purchased an SP, and that's
mm,
based on now 4,400 hectares. So I've got I know farmers that have got less than me, and they've got an SP. So
mm,
I guess it just comes down to the bank account. I could really say that. I know farmers that only got 2,000 hectares and they're running an SP. So
mm.
I think that's a hard one. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, look, I'm thinking that 4 to 5,000 hectares is about where you want to be. I think when we got into the 4430, they were a bit cheaper. They were the 700 grand, not the 900 grand that they are now. Look, a tug along sprayer is a bloody cheap option, and there's not a lot of jobs that they can't do. So,
Mm.
look, the size of them getting monstrous. They're up to 11,000 litres or something now. Some of them,
Yeah, they're getting
it's
big.
look, yeah, I don't know. I've I think there is definitely advantages to going towards SP, but at the same time, there's plenty of advantages staying with tag along for sure.
Yeah. No, no, for sure. And it's funny, we could spend another half an hour on that conversation going
Yeah,
through the ins and outs between the tug along and the SPs and its abilities and all that. There's no doubt that's got its own game in itself.
yeah, yep.
Mm.
Anyway, we might go and have a chat about that over on TikTok. Anyone
Yeah,
who wants to follow us over, we'll head over to TikTok and yeah, we'll have a chat over there as well. Thanks for coming on for all the YouTubers. I've got a fair few blokes that just do the YouTube thing and they don't touch TikTok, so it's good to spread the love a bit. We were trying
no,
to
no,
do them on Facebook, but there at one stage, and it was just hopeless, so we give up on Facebook.
no, no, that's
Anyway,
fair enough. No,
I'll send you a message in a second, and
yep,
yeah, we'll go over to TikTok.
no, excellent,
Thanks,
mate. Thanks for
everybody.
that. Thanks, everyone.
Right, that will see us.
So,